I forget the statistics, but someone was laying out basically what a lottery win it is if you have a man that is at least 6 foot, is making six figures, is not currently married, and then is also attractive. It was like 1%. It was something abysmal, and yet almost all of these women, this is their, at least what they say out loud, what they want from a partner, and they come across what could be a potential excellent match for them, but he's 5'9" or he's 5'10", so immediately can't can't build a life with that person. And Esther Perel is like this relationship coach that I really, really love her content. And she talks about building a love story versus a life story with somebody. And I see that a lot with the younger generations. It's they want this love story. And she says you can have that with almost anybody, even for a night. You can have this really epic, passionate love story, even if it's only for a couple of hours. But to build a life story with someone is a lot more difficult and a lot more rare. So you kind of have to look at long-term relationship. What is the goal of that, and is it always going to be fireworks and hot passion and just like this just like more like primal attraction versus all of the things that go into sustaining a relationship? And I think that's where apps get a little bit tricky because you're not taking into account chemistry of being in person. Like even with interviews like this, for example, it's it's always going to be second best to like if you were sitting in the chair next to me. There's a lot that's nonverbal that's not going to be picked up as on a screen like it would in person. So do you think that the dating apps are having like more of a negative consequence to dating, or is it just the next evolution that's just going to happen? Like it's out of our hands.
Yeah, I mean, in a practical sense, it's probably out of our hands because it's there, and it's really difficult to roll technology back and kind of take it away.
Hmm.
But does it have kind of a negative thing? I think it's a little bit of both because certainly it expands the mate pool, and people who do well on dating apps, maybe they have an expanded mate pool. They can meet people more easily that they otherwise wouldn't have. Okay, so there's kind of a good side. But we know at the same time that dating apps just don't work for a lot of people. And like you said, I think for women especially, they miss a lot of cues that might make them attracted to a man that they wouldn't if it's just a picture. We know, for example, that women rate male pictures and male just attractiveness, just a picture, like really low. So it doesn't do it for most women just to see a picture of a guy, even if he's a conventionally attractive guy, especially if he's an average guy. Just like a picture, very often is not going to do it. We know on dating apps as well that there's a serial swiping effect. So the more profiles that a woman views, the more likely she is to reject them and swipe left. So there's kind of that overload of choice there. So yeah, the dating apps probably do increase selectivity, and we know that women have evolved to be much more selective in mate selection than men have. So combined those two things, yeah, I think it's really common, that women can go on a dating app, have hundreds of potential matches, and like zero of them at all, which can make men very frustrated. Like, why don't I get any matches? Everyone is kind of, I guess, black pilled, so to speak, on these apps at this point. But yeah, there's some things that are good about them, some things that are bad, but there's definitely an effect there that I think is very frustrating, both for men and women with these apps.
So I have this friend, and he's a great guy, like awesome, like just one in a million kind of guy, and just very shy. Not the type that's going to approach a woman at a bar. And he was single for such a long time. And it was so annoying to me because I'm like, you are such a good catch. Like, you just have to get out there. So I finally convinced him to go on an app. And I don't know what I'm talking about because I've never been on one of these apps. So I don't know what it's like out there. But I'm like, if you can't approach women in person, this is the next best thing, because then you don't have that immediate, I guess, like you got like embarrassment or like the pressure, because there's like a buffer between like the act and the response. So I hired a professional photographer to get pictures, and he was mortified. So he thought I was gonna like dress him up in a bow tie and like make him pose for a prom. I was like, no, 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 like lean into who you are. Like, he's a hunter, he's like a blue collar, so we got his truck, we got his bow, and we just took like very candid pictures, put them online. He found his wife in like a week. No joke. And now they're expecting their first baby. So I know that there are some really good stories, and there are some uses for it, but it's like, just don't fall into the trap of swiping, and maybe like lower your standards a little bit. Like, is this person a good person? Is there chemistry, versus trying to take out your tape measure and measure the guy? You know what I mean? Like, that just seems kind of silly to me.
Yeah, and I mean, you said that he had professional pictures done, which I think is probably really important because
Mhm.
if it's just a picture, the picture has to be really, really good, and we know that women are very, very picky with these pictures. So it's kind of like, if you swipe through a lot of profiles on apps, I think especially male profiles, you will see men take a selfie in a mirror. There's
They're
toothpaste on
so
the
bad.
yeah, they're so bad. There's toothpaste on the mirror and everything, and it's like with something like that, what do you expect? And I haven't seen any research actually that kind of has controlled for that. Like, how good are these pictures? Because a lot of it could just be that the pictures just aren't great to begin with.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a double standard for men because there's either a terrible photo of him holding up like a dead animal, and I'm like, that's know your audience. That's probably you can say that you hunt without that being the picture, or it's a guy really trying to be sexy, and for some reason, if a woman does it, it's usually hot and it's perceived well, but if a man's trying to be sexy, you're like, "Ooh, no, like that doesn't work for me." If there's like a lot of obvious effort for me, at least for me, it's a turn off.
Yeah, and actually, it's interesting because the animal thing. I ran a survey on dating app deal breakers, and it wasn't a really high one for women, but it did make the list. It was one of the things that women don't like to see is kind of the dead animal. And yeah, I don't even think that's just excluding certain women that don't like hunting. I think it's just that kind of picture that's like maybe you don't want to see a dead animal.
Yeah, no, like, there's conflicting things. I'm trying to figure out if I'm attracted to you, and there's also this dead fluffy thing in the photo. It's
Yeah.
not working for me. Um, so I found this thread today when I was just, like, scrolling through Twitter, and it was talking about confidence, and it was interesting because it said confidence is sexy unless it's a woman, and we're always told to be confident that, like, walk into a room shoulders back, like, head up, direct eye contact. Let me see if I can find it. And this woman was using AI to kind of make the argument. So she was showing what a lot of men are generating for like AI girlfriends and that kind of a thing. And she says a timid, pretty girl who's sexually forward because she's overwhelmed by lust is the character out of a male fantasy. So if you're looking at these images of a girl, usually it is consenting and engaging, but there's also like a little hint of shyness or like timidness, trepidation, whatever. And it's that combination that men find really attractive and not that Victoria's Secret boss babe where she's like strutting and like very alpha. I don't know if you have any research on any of that, like if men find the more like alpha woman attractive or if there has to be like a little peppering of timid trepidation there.
I think I know the account you're talking about. I like that account actually. Yeah.
I just
Once you
followed
said
it.
the AI images, I had an idea of who you were talking about. But yeah,
It's
there.
undead
Yeah,
at yeah, undead
odalisque,
odalisque?
something like
Odalisque. Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of research that indicates okay, femininity is attractive to men, both as far as physical signals of femininity and behavior. And so, we don't associate aggressiveness, assertiveness, dominance, or anything like that with behavioral femininity. So I think this is frustrating for a lot of women who are more assertive, maybe who don't necessarily want to be a boss babe, but who do want to be kind of an independent person. That men often just don't really value those things as far as attractiveness is concerned, or seeking a mate. They're not always negative traits. I think sometimes they can be good in a female partner, but they aren't things, yeah, that tend to stand out toward men. So we did actually run a survey on this, and we looked at self-rated masculinity and femininity, and also preferences for masculinity and femininity in a partner. These were correlated pretty well at zero point 0.5, which is uh, a moderate correlation, but pretty large for what you see in psychology. That men who see themselves as more masculine, they prefer a much more feminine woman. Women who see themselves as more feminine, similarly, prefer a much more masculine man. So you kind of see that preference for polarity there. Typically, that the
Mm.
more feminine someone is, the more they're going to prefer kind of that masculine guy, and vice versa as well.
So if you have a woman that's more in her masculine, she's gonna want a more submissive mate?
Yeah, probably, or perhaps a more egalitarian mate. It's hard. We didn't look at that specifically, but well, yeah, it would be something kind of like that. That the less someone identifies perhaps as stereotypically masculine or feminine, the less they're going to prefer those roles or those behaviors or traits in a partner.
And then what were you categorizing as masculine or feminine? Was it like certain attitudes or belief systems or actions?
So it was a little bit of both. We used a traditional masculinity and femininity scale, and we also just asked a single question like how masculine do you see yourself? How feminine do you see yourself? So in this scale, it asks about like a belief in traditional roles and a belief in similar things, similar kind of to that traditional roles and behaviors, as well as I think physical traits.